In the 1960s, Kelvin High School, like the rest of the world, was changing rapidly. In 1965, the cornerstone for the new school was laid. In his speech to the grads, valedictorian Tim Wilson said, "It's not hard to say goodbye to chipped plaster, creaky floors, and flooded basements, but it is a great loss to leave behind the time-honored traditions that were so much a part of the old school. And we are grateful that in our time, we were able to share in these traditions." A few months later, the red brick school with all of its cherished memories was demolished. One memory many students had was of November 22nd, 1963. They remembered their excitement for an upcoming school dance scheduled for this infamous day. The dance was, of course, cancelled once the school heard the news about President Kennedy's assassination. One student remembered, "I will never forget when the announcement that President Kennedy had been shot came over the PA system. The gasps, then silence, and then the muffled sobbing of an American girl in our classroom." These were historic days, and Kelvin High School was full of history makers, one of whom was a young hockey player named Alton White. After Kelvin, White became the second player of African descent to play professional hockey. He was the first to have a 20-goal season and the first to score a hat trick. Like White, Shirley Tilghman also turned established traditions on their head. She became a respected molecular biologist. In 2001, she was named Princeton University's first female president. Tilghman is only the second woman to be president of an Ivy League university. Pat Mooney, who was the president of Kelvin's Science and United Nations clubs, made history for other reasons. After Kelvin, Mooney became an international authority on agricultural diversity and new technology issues. For his work, he was awarded the prestigious Right Livelihood Award, as well as the Pearson Medal of Peace. Fred Penner, a contemporary of Mooney's, was also very active at the school. He played on the school's soccer teams and performed lead roles in the school's Gilbert and Sullivan musical productions. After Kelvin, Penner, a children's performer, gained international fame when he recorded "The Cat Came Back." He is a member of the Order of Canada. At the time, few would have predicted the reclusive Neil Young would, like Penner, also receive our country's highest honor for lifetime achievement. At Kelvin, Young was hard to find. He didn't sing in any of the school's musicals. He wasn't on the sports teams. Once he decided to pursue his solo music career, he left Winnipeg for Thunder Bay. He never graduated from the school. Young went on to become one of the most influential musicians of his generation. In over 40 years of playing music, he has produced 34 studio albums. He has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice as a solo artist and as a member of his band, Buffalo Springfield. While Young was pursuing his music dreams, Kelvin students were realizing their own. In 1964, the football team won the city and provincial championships. In 1969, the varsity boys volleyball team finally won the coveted provincial title, the only Clippers volleyball team to accomplish such a feat. Not to be outdone by those long and lanky athletes, a year later, Mr. Allward's cerebral reach for the top team won the national championship. As a teacher, Clarence Kerr was as exceptional as those historic teams. Respected by his students and colleagues, he dedicated 35 years of his life to all aspects of Kelvin culture. One student wrote, "He was first to arrive at school each morning and the last teacher to leave. He lent his personal support to every activity, music, drama, yearbook, social functions, but his special love was sports." For years in the same season, Kerr coached both the senior girls and junior girls basketball teams. He also donated much of his own money in order to send certain students and former players to university. But he is perhaps best remembered for his eccentric teaching style and the manner in which he disciplined his students. Phyllis Kyle wrote, "Mr. Kerr had a perfect aim with a piece of chalk when he wanted you to pay attention." By this time, the student body was increasingly challenging the status quo. The debating team argued over legalizing homosexuality. In 1970, the student president's yearbook message was censored for its political tone. 1 year later, his successor Mary J. Croteau wrote, "There is little that a high school president can do. The only feelings I have are those of frustration and disappointment. There are many problems within the public school system." In 1972, valedictorian Connie Lebrun told the grads, "This materialistic society places much emphasis on worldly success, but it is far more important to strive for self-satisfaction and fulfillment." By the mid to late 1970s, some Kelvin students were getting their fulfillment from school travel. The choir performed in Toronto and Montreal. There was a student exchange with Newfoundlanders, and some students even went to Mexico. Campbell Wright and Gordon Orlico formed the Outdoors Club. They took their members all the way to the Rockies. Students were also given new platforms for creative expression. The Christmas Capers, the predecessor of Class Act, allowed both students and staff to show off their artistic talents. Gail Asper had plenty of these talents. In 1978, she played Anne in the musical production Anne of Green Gables. After she graduated, she became the corporate secretary and a director of CanWest Global. She's the managing director and the secretary of the Asper Foundation, the private charity responsible for the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. She is an officer of the Order of Canada. By the 1980s, Kelvin was offering its students multiple options for study as well as extracurricular activities. French immersion was implemented, followed by its diploma program. The school's cherished International Baccalaureate program was also adopted. Meanwhile, at Kelvin's first fashion show, students were showing off their style on the catwalk. They flew across the Atlantic to France, London, Greece, and Israel. With enthusiasm, the school students joined the ski, car rally, tennis, gaming, judo, and cycling clubs. They performed in musicals such as Annie Get Your Gun and The Boyfriend. Kelvin students particularly excelled at cross-country and track and field. Both teams won numerous championships. For years, Dr. Lionel Orlico coached the cross-country team. He taught at Kelvin as a younger man. He then left the school to pursue a doctorate. Orlico later became the Deputy Minister of the Provincial Education Department. In this capacity, he was instrumental in developing Manitoba's first adult education centres. For 4 decades, he had a profound relationship with Kelvin and its students. He never ran for Dr. Orlico, but Mike Keane was as focused in achieving his goals as any long-distance runner. He left Kelvin early to play junior hockey. He was never drafted, but he signed as a free agent with the Montreal Canadiens. Keane went on to play 16 years in the NHL. He is one of only 10 players in the league's history to have won 3 Stanley Cups with 3 different teams. Like Keane, John Standing was a winner. For 19 years at the Winnipeg Music Festival, his choirs won multiple Earl Grey trophies. In 1987, the year that he retired, his choirs won every class that they entered. Beyond Kelvin, Standing was the director of the Winnipeg Girls Senior Choir and the First National Youth Choir, and he inspired many Kelvin students to pursue careers in music and theatre. Standing also organized Kelvin's 75th anniversary reunion choir. In June 1987, he, along with almost 2,000 Kelvin graduates, participated in the festivities. One of Kelvin's original students of 1912 attended. But most of the excitement at the reunion was generated by the surprise return of a middle-aged man wearing a brown leather jacket. Many remembered him as that shy, awkward musician from the early 60s, now better known to the world as Neil Young.